and you saw it here first, folks. The first Watchmen review to feature a puppy. Ah! Oof. This is my dog, Shawnee. And she's just 8 months old, so technically she's a puppy. Because, you know, I wanted to have like a special Watchmen review because there's going to be like hundreds of them on the internet. And I figured, what does my review need to be special? A puppy! Now let's get to the business at hand, which is the Watchmen movie. Now, I read the graphic novel, and even though I don't think it's the best comic book ever written, I don't even think it's the best comic book Alan Moore has ever written, but I do appreciate its complexity, and I do appreciate its place in comic book culture. That being said, the movie, I think, visually, the best thing I can say about it is that it looks and feels very different. It's very memorable because of that, and it's definitely something we haven't seen so far, and it sets itself apart from other superhero movies. Another thing that I liked, and I think that Zack Snyder accomplished very well, is that it really feels the action takes place in the 1985, and it really does feel like an alternate version of the 80s. The suits and the music and everything being so bright and everything being so loud, it does feel like a sort of morphed dark side version of the 80s. What I didn't like about the visual style of the movie is that there were too many special effects, even to the point where it got ridiculous. There is so much slow motion in this movie, and it feels silly because these are supposed to be real people, these masked vigilantes, which are the heroes of the movie. They're supposed to be real normal people, and they're supposed to fight like normal people, but most of these fights, I mean, it feels like they're in the freaking Matrix or something. Narratively, this movie is almost 3 hours long, and because I read the comic book, I was very invested in all these 3 hours. I was never bored. I wanted to see how the story plays out. I wanted to see how this story was given life on the big screen. But I think that somebody who hasn't read the graphic novel will certainly ask themselves, why all these flashbacks? Why do I need so much information about all these characters, you know, in the sense that I have to go from origin story to origin story to origin story, you know, because for being a 3 hour movie, is definitely very packed, very condensed, and very complex, to the point where, seriously, I think that the normal general audience will definitely ask themselves, why do I need to spend so much time on all this stuff? The story is pretty faithful to the comic book, even to the point where there are scenes which are taken from panels in the comic book. There are certain changes. I think that the most important one is the ending. I understand why they changed the ending. I think they wanted the story to be a little bit more contained, and they wanted to avoid outlandish, bizarre elements. But I think within the context of the movie, where we already have some pretty weird, over-the-top things going on, I think they could have kept the ending from the comic book. It wouldn't have been that big of a departure. While I can accept some of the changes for the sake of making the movie friendlier to the general audience, I do think they kind of robbed the story of some of its impact. And the message that Alan Moore wanted to deliver, I think it gets lost in the shuffle of action scenes and sex and special effects. In terms of characters, I think that Night Owl managed to be played by Patrick Wilson, and does manage to be a pretty sympathetic character. I liked him. I do think that Rorschach and Dr. Manhattan are the best characters. Silk Spectre 2, or Laurie Jupiter, didn't receive nearly as much development as she should. I mean, everybody else gets a pretty good origin story, but it's never really properly explained that Laurie Jupiter entered the superhero business because of her mother, and kind of blames her mother for her traumatic life. Ozymandias, boy, this one was horribly, and I mean horribly, miscast. And it's really a shame, because Matthew Good is a charming guy, and he's an intelligent guy, but he doesn't get it. he doesn't get the character, and he doesn't get the material, and because of that, the character feels very off compared to the other characters in the movie. And even, you know, from a visual point of view, he looks terrible in that bleached blonde hair and that muscle suit. So in conclusion, I think everybody who has read the Watchmen novel kind of has an idea how a Watchmen movie should look and feel. Zack Snyder deserves some mad props for delivering his version of the story. It is definitely not boring. I think it can get a little confusing, but I'm kind of disappointed that it doesn't have nearly the same bite as the original story.